Good afternoon, everybody. It's going to be our Summary of Markets episode 128. We're going to talk about ES, Nasdaq, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and we're also going to talk about gold and oil as well, since we haven't covered those in a couple of videos. But let's get started here with ES. So ES had a hell of a week last week, broke out pretty strongly after the FOMC meeting, and it just had a completely aggressive buy pressure since the FOMC meeting. The bears were getting completely destroyed on the way up. Basically, no sell pressure was maintaining. You didn't even have like any major fake outs or anything. The bulls were just completely winning on the delta, and they pushed it up the entire session. So the last like 3 days combined, we had, I think, over 50 to 60,000 positive delta, meaning that on the way up, the buyers were extremely aggressive and they were just completely beating the sellers the entire way. So this does not look like a fake out. It does not look like a trap. It looks like the bulls are in complete control. Now, if we go to the daily here, we can see that the targets that we were looking for the last couple of weeks was this value zone, basically from 40.75 up to 41.28. That has finally been filled. So those value targets have been hit. So we can go ahead and get rid of those levels there. And now moving forward, the main targets that we are looking for are the highs up here that have not been tested. So we can look at this high right here. We can also look at this high as well. And then mainly we are watching that 200 EMA, which is relatively the same level around that 41.85. Okay, so moving forward, those are the upper targets. Now for the lower targets, we want to watch these value zones that we created on the way up. So we have this value area high here, going all the way down to the value area low here. And then if we wanted to mark out the POC, we can mark that out as well. So looking at the session on Friday, we could see that we retested that value area high there. We were not able to retest that big POC node, which was right here. So that's going to act as support if we do come down to that level. And then if we do start to hold value below these two levels, you want to look for that value retrace down to 4,018. So moving forward for next week, we don't have any major economic news as we did the last couple of weeks, obviously with the FOMC and whatnot, but we do have the first week of the month. So we are going to get some ISM data on Monday. We have some JOLTS job openings on Tuesday, more ISM data on Wednesday, nothing really major on Thursday besides the unemployment at 8:30. And then we have some more unemployment stuff on Friday. So mostly this first week of the month is going to be employment data. It's not anything major like we saw on the GDP and the FOMC, but the market will react to those ISM PMI data points on Monday and Wednesday. So keep an eye on those. But moving forward, I would definitely lean bullish as long as we are maintaining above that 4,080 to 4,070 support level. Okay. Looking at the weekly candle, we can see that we are breaking away from the accumulation and we are retesting that first major resistance. Now, we did put in a weekly lower low, which beautifully bounced off that weekly 200 EMA. That was obviously a couple months ago, so that was back in June. But that was bouncing off the 200 EMA, created the accumulation. Now we are breaking away from that accumulation. So this is the first major week that is breaking away from that accumulation. We had the week here on July 18th, but it didn't really get too far away from that accumulation. This is completely breaking away from that accumulation. So the bulls are 100% in control of this week. Now, looking at the weekly structure, the only thing that you would be worried about is this little top doji here that caused that major sell-off. If we can't put in a higher high, if we can't break above that 4180 to 4200, then this will most likely just be a continuation of this downtrend. It will put in a lower high. It already put in the lower low. So then we will continue back down into that accumulation. Now, I would assume with the massive amount of buy pressure that we saw during this week, this will most likely break this high and it will create that higher high. So I would definitely be leaning bullish going into this week as long as the data prints that we see this week are not extremely bearish. All right. Okay, moving on to Nasdaq. Nasdaq actually already broke out of that weekly high, so Nasdaq is already putting in that higher high. So we put in the lower high, but now we are putting in a higher high. If it can maintain above that 12.7, the 12,700 level. This is definitely leaning bullish into that kind of inefficiency sell-off that we saw from all the way from 14,800 down to 12,800. So basically this sell-off here didn't create a whole lot of value on the longer time frames, so we could quickly reclaim that sell-off. Obviously that is on a mid to long term standpoint. But looking at the shorter term here on the 30-minute, if we can maintain above the value that was created on Friday, which is around that 12,900, we can go ahead and mark this out as our value area high. We can mark this out as our value area low. And if we want to grab that POC, we can grab that as well. So as long as we stay above this value, we should continue higher. Like I said, there's not a bunch of major resistance. You'd have to zoom out pretty far. You can see we have to zoom all the way back to this sell-off here, which doesn't give us our volume profile. So we would have to go back on the daily, and we would have to create our own volume profiles here. So if we grab our volume profile tool, we can grab this a little accumulation here, and we can find where is our major value inside that accumulation. So the first major level would be exactly where we are now. That would be the value area low. We have the POC here as well. And then we have the value area high. So moving forward, these levels will be our main targets. So we're already hitting that first main target, which is that 12,970. If we can maintain above that on a daily time frame, we should be looking for 13,100, and then our final target would be around 13,300. So this was breaking out of this kind of range high that we saw here, kind of a slow grind up. So we want to be careful here and see if it's going to be a sweeping high or it's going to be a proper high. A sweeping high would basically be if it broke this level for like a day and then you started to lose value and you retested these lower levels. We do not want to see it hold value below that 13,000 mark. So for a couple days this week, we really need to see that start to press above 13,000 and hold above that level. If it starts to sweep below that level and you lose these lower value supports, it's not looking too good. We're most likely going to come back down to this lower value right here. Okay. All right, moving on to oil here. So oil, if you guys remember, we talked about a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how this was potentially sweeping this low of the accumulation, which we did here. You swept that low, you maintained that 200 EMA as a support level, and now we are trying to get back inside that value of that accumulation. So if we extend this value here, we can extend it all the way to where we are now. Actually, let's extend it before the sweep. So the sweep was right here. So we're going to extend it right there. We're going to grab our value area low. POC is basically the same level. Value area high gets shifted. Actually, wrong level here. Value area high gets shifted a little bit here. So if we can maintain back above the 100 level, you have that POC resistance, which is at 103. You can see how we kind of failed that level already. If we can maintain back above 103, you are looking for the full value retrace of that 115 level. If we can get back above 115, then we're talking about going for those previous highs around 130 to 125. But that's for another video. That's obviously not going to happen during the entire next week. But if we can maintain back above 100, you want to lean bullish. If it gets back below 95, you want to lean bearish. Now, where are we going to be headed if this does start to sell off? You can see that this was an entire impulse up, so it didn't really create a whole lot of value during that impulse. But if we grab a volume profile and we look at that entire impulse, we can kind of see where our value levels are. So we have the value area high right there, which is around 89. And then we don't have another value level until we get all the way back down to the POC way down here at 71. So what we can do is we can zoom in and we can find where any of that value was being traded. So we have a couple of levels here. We have that node right there. We have that node right there. And then if we wanted to, we can mark out this LVN as well. So if we do start to sell off, you have a couple of major supports around that 88 to 87, and then not really any support until we get down to 81. Okay, so you really want to maintain that 200 EMA. If you start to lose that 200 EMA, you do not have a whole lot of support, and you could continue that nasty bearish impulse. All right. Moving on to gold here. We haven't talked about gold in a few weeks. Let's see what's going on. We can extend our volume profile here. We can see that that POC is staying as that same level. Let's get rid of all these old levels here, and let's just draw some new levels. So let's once again grab our volume profile. We can see that the value area low of this distribution is right here. The POC is right here. And then our value area high is way up here. So if we can maintain above this 1796 / like 1800, we should start to slowly climb back in that value area high, which is around that 1926 level. It's a pretty steady value during that entire value area. So you could find resistance at really any of these points. You can see that we have a major node around 1860, major node around 1900. So basically all the way up, you could find some resistance. So be careful on that. But the overall target would be that 1926. And then if we can maintain above that level, obviously there's not a whole lot of value on that upper tail. Once you start to get above like 1975, there really is no value above that. So you could easily climb $100 to $200 past that point. Now looking at the weekly 200, you're bouncing beautifully off that level. We have not tested that level since way back in 2019, like 2019 May low. So this is a very strong reaction we're getting here. Basically a morning star reaction. You can see that middle doji and then the confirmation on the strong weekly candle there. So typically this 3 candlestick pattern is a bullish reversal pattern. So we should start to see some buy pressure potentially into 1800, maybe 1840. If we do start to hold back below that value area low around 1760, then I would be leaning bearish going back into that 200 EMA. All right. Okay, moving on to Bitcoin here. Let's take a look at what's going on. So Bitcoin broke away from that accumulation. You did hit our target around 24,100, pulled back into the accumulation, retested it, and then we got that breakout yet again into that 24,100. Now, you can see that that level is acting as major resistance. You caused a pullback there, and then you caused a pullback here. But notice that this pullback is maintaining relatively close to that 24,100, and you are also trying to maintain above that previous high. So as long as it maintains above that 23,000 high, I think this is going to go for a breakout potentially into that 26,000. If it does start to break back below that previous high, then you want to look for that 22,400 or that value area high, which is around 21,700. Okay. But for now, I would definitely lean bullish going into that 26K. And realistically, if you guys are like mid to long-term traders, we do not have any major resistance until we get back down to this previous low here around 28,000. And then you're looking for that previous high, which is around 31,700. Okay. So realistically, not a whole lot of resistance if we can get over this hump that is at 24,100. All right. Now looking at Ethereum, we actually have already begun this impulse. So you can see that we broke away from the accumulation, pulled back to retest it, and then we had a very strong reaction pushing into that level that we had marked out around 1785. You basically topped out on the level almost to the dollar. So if you guys were using our target there, you got out basically on the high. So it's putting in almost a bilateral triangle up here at the top. Beautiful bull flag. Same thing with Bitcoin. That we said with Bitcoin, if you can maintain above this previous high, so maintain above that 1600, we should be getting a nice breakout into that 1800 again, and then potentially sweeping this previous high right here, which would be that 1873. Okay, so breaking above 1785, look for 1873. As long as you maintain this bull flag pattern, you should be leaning bullish. If it does start to lose that 1650, short term, you could lean bearish back into that 1550/1500 previous distribution. All right. But all right, that is it for the summary markets. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. One last thing I wanted to mention, I'm going to be releasing another free indicator at the end of today. So be on the lookout for this free indicator to be released. If you guys have been watching my live streams, we have been talking a lot about half back and one time framing. They are different terms used for order flow trading / market profile, volume profile trading. So I went ahead and made a little indicator here that will help us find when the time frame, when the 30-minute is one time framing or when we have those potential halfback trades. So if you guys are not familiar with those terms, just stop by our live stream. We talk about these on a day-to-day basis, but look out for that indicator later today. It will be free, as I said. All you have to do is go to the Oasis trading page on TradingView and then add it to your favorites, and you guys can use that in your trading. That will be released probably the next few hours, so be on the lookout for that. But all right, guys, if you guys like this video, make sure to hit the like button. I will see you guys tomorrow at 9:30 for our live trading session. See you then.